What is up, One Life students? First of all, I just want to say Merry Christmas. I hope you're having an awesome Christmas season and everything that this season brings with it. My name is Josh. I am the Director of Digital Engagement here at One Life Church, and I just wanted to introduce this next experience for you. This next experience is a question and answer panel based on some questions that we received from you, our very own One Life students. You will hear me off screen, kind of moderating the question and answer and speaking with the panelists. But basically, we wanted to just address some of your most pressing questions about Christmas and Advent and Jesus, and just some of those explorer-driven questions. See, here at One Life Church, we believe that you can bring your brain to church. Basically, what that means is that we truly believe that this Christianity, this faith, the Christ-centered worldview is one that can be defended. It can be defended through science and history. And we believe that this worldview does possess intellectual integrity. Because of that, we are privileged and enjoy the opportunity to think and wonder and explore. And we encourage you as students to do exactly that. And so we just had a blast putting together this panel for you and addressing some of these questions that you as our students have submitted. And we hope that it is as valuable for you as it was for us just going through some of the questions ourselves and addressing those. Now, because 2020 has been the craziest year on earth, obviously we had to do some things that were a little challenging with spacing and masking and trying to share a microphone without doing too much passing around and things like that. But even amidst those challenges, it was a privilege to be able to put together something like this for you, our students, and we hope that you get as much value out of it as we got from putting it together. Check it out.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this One Life Students experience, and we just want to go ahead and kick it off with the very first question. The first question is, about how many miracles does Jesus typically perform during this time of year, during the Christmas Advent season?
What up, everybody? I'm Ryan. I'm a campus pastor here, and I got to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to this question, but I will help guide you to maybe find what you may consider a sufficient answer to this question. I guess it says that the typical amount of miracles Jesus does this time every year feels hard to come down on an answer like specific for how many miracles does he do ever really at any point in time in the year. I think it's really hard to measure that. It would be almost impossible to measure that. But what we know, what we know the Bible teaches us is that we as followers of Jesus can, in fact, ask Jesus for miracles, ask the Holy Spirit for miracles. We can ask God for miracles. We can do those things. And I think we're supposed to believe that. I think we're supposed to believe that he can and will and wants to bring miraculous healing, miraculous answered prayers and things of that nature to our lives. I think measuring the quantity of how many may not be the best way to go about answering that question. I think it's more like understanding the fact how cool it is that we can actually go to the God of the universe that created all things, and we can ask him for things, and he absolutely delivers. So that's how I would answer that question.
Anyone else on the panel want to weigh in on that one? Anthony?
Yeah, that's pretty hard to follow. Anthony Melvin, I am a light designer here at One Life Church. Thinking about that question, it's a good question, as far as numbers, but it also hinges on perspective. What you may see as a miracle, I may not, and vice versa. And so I think it really is in the eyes of the beholder. If you look for miracles, you'll see a lot more than if you're not looking for miracles. And if you're not looking for miracles, then when something good happens, you may be selfish reasons thinking that you did that yourself. And so it really hinges on perspective and what you believe.
Nice. Thanks, Anthony. Anyone else on the panel want to weigh in on this particular question? All right. It seems like we nailed it. So if you're familiar with the Google autofills, we're going to do some of that as well. We have some really cool questions that we went to Google and posed some Advent questions there, and we just want to see what Google brought up for us. So, Cecilia?
Okay, I am Cecilia Garrison, and I'm one of the middle school teaching leaders at Henderson. So this one is, did the wise men, can you see? Did the wise men Oh, I ripped some of the words off. It's supposed to say, did the wise men lie to King Herod? Did they lie to King Herod? It depends on if you consider it like maybe a lie of omission. Because I think they were like, we'll let you know what we find out. See you later. And then they did not get back with him. So I don't think they reported like, hey, yeah, we checked it out. There's nothing to worry about. Did they? No. I think they just ghosted him. Right? Okay, the next one. Oh my gosh. I'm not. Oh wait, this one's gonna work.
Google's giving us technical difficulties.
Google. Did the wise men? It says, did the wise men see an angel? And I'll be honest, all that catechism, and I don't remember if it was a dream or an angel. Does anybody know? Did the wise men? You do? Yeah. Here, Brian.
Okay, so I got the cool opportunity in 2009 to go to Israel, and I actually visited the place where they call it the Shepherd's Field, and that's where supposedly this angel appeared to the shepherds in the field. And so, according to Scripture and history and being there, it is my understanding that and Brett even talked about this in his message. Talked about how that something we'll call it an angel appeared to them in the middle of a field, and that happened. So I would say the answer to the question is yes.
But what about the wise men, not the shepherds?
Oh, they said the wise men?
I am Aaron. I am a kids leader here, Aaron. All you middle schoolers that have moved up, I miss you. Glad to be back. I work in the kids. Ryan, we were talking about wise men.
Okay, but so like the wise men, they went and they talked to Herod and then but I can't remember, did they have a dream or did an angel tell them, don't tell Herod? Somehow they were warned not to tell. Was it a dream? Maybe an angel came to them in a dream? Maybe that's why this is tricky. Okay, Ryan's going to actually Google it while we answer the next one. Did the wise men want to find Jesus? Did the wise men want to find Jesus? Does anybody want to take it? I'll take it. They did. I don't think they knew what they were looking for. I don't think they realized they were going to be like in a barn with a lady that just had a baby in a barn, right? I think they knew that there was going to be a king. There was a king, but I don't think they knew exactly what they were looking for. I think they were surprised. And then I think Ryan, I bet you could answer this one, Ryan. Mm-hmm. Where'd the wise men come from?
As far as I can understand, it was the Far East. So I don't know that it could have been like a Babylon type place. Could have been all kinds of places, but the Bible just says the Far East. When they say wise men, I think they were able to read the stars and map out where they're going and chart their journeys based on stars, and that's where the whole North Star of Bethlehem came into play and kind of how they found Jesus to begin with. So pretty cool dudes.
So they were educated. So like when I was growing up, I was always told that maybe that they were kings, right? Like we three kings were the kings. Anthony, you were raised Catholic. Did you have any of that in your? I know that song. Okay, well that's all my Google autofills. Hope that helped.
Anyone else want to weigh in on the wise men, 3 or so wise men that we know of? All right, so the next question that we have here is a pretty simple question, maybe not such a simple answer. What happened to Joseph? It seems like he kind of falls off the map in the Bible, and what's up with that? What happened to Joseph?
It's Aaron again. So I did some research on this today. I thought that was a great question. I've often thought about that myself. One thing that I found was that there's a school of thought that Joseph was actually a little bit older, or actually significantly older than Mary. And if you remember, later on in the Bible, it kind of stops. So Jesus was born. Then in Luke, he goes in to the temple. And then it kind of leaves out his early years. It goes into the first time that he is away from Mary and Joseph, and they've gone actually back to Bethlehem and Nazareth, and they leave Jesus and they go back home, and Jesus is nowhere to be found. This is in Luke, the end of chapter 2. And so then Joseph comes back, Mary does some talking, and that's the last you hear of Joseph. One school of thought is that Joseph, like I said, was quite a bit older than Mary, and so he actually died sometime in Jesus' life. And so one of the reasons why people believe that is because Joseph is not present with Mary at Jesus' first miracle in the wedding in Canaan. There's also there's no mention of Joseph at the cross when Jesus dies. And Jesus leaves Mary to the disciples. That's who Jesus, not to Joseph, but to the disciples. So that's one school of thought, and I'm sure there are many others, and I think somebody else is going to talk about those.
So I'm Nikki, and I'm on the student teaching team for middle schoolers as well, so some of you may be familiar with me. Just to offer another perspective, it is possible that the Bible stops mentioning Joseph after the temple when Jesus is left behind and he's there learning from the other teachers, is that the Bible, while it is historically accurate, it is true, and we can follow it and trust the words in the Bible. It doesn't give every single detail, and so what we may consider, or the people who wrote the Bible may consider, an unimportant character or a non-vital character may be left out of stories. So it's possible that Joseph just didn't have much of a role after that, and so they didn't feel the need to continue including him into the stories. But like everyone has said, keep searching and figure it out for yourself.
All right. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question? What did happen to Joseph? All right, let's move on to the next question. Let's do another Google autofill. What's our next Google autofill?
All right, so I have, was Mary. So was Mary a teenager? So to the best of my knowledge, yes. I believe, and someone can correct me, I'm sure they will. I think she was around maybe like 13 to 15 years old, just judging by cultural and things like that. So she kind of would have been like middle school age. Do you guys, anybody want to correct me on that one? Yeah, cool. All right. So middle school girls, imagine. Total freak out moment. Was Mary really a virgin? I have an answer. Anybody else? No? Okay. So Scripture tells us that she was, and it takes a bit of an element of faith because there's really not a lot to prove or disprove that. We do know from what Scripture tells us that they had not consecrated their marriage yet, so that would tell us that culturally she would have been a virgin. The angel appeared and told her, she seemed very surprised by a conception, so all things point to her actually being a virgin. Anybody? Cool. Oh. All right. So was Mary chosen for a reason? Does anybody got? They're just all going to leave me hanging up here. I'm going to do the second one because I think they kind of go along with each other. Because the second one, the last one here was Mary from the line of King David? So there was a little bit of debate beforehand, but according to the lineage, I think in Matthew, it lists Mary as the wife of Joseph from the line of King David. So in order to fulfill the prophecy that the Messiah would come from the line of King David, they needed to choose the wife of Joseph, who was a virgin and came from that line. So that would be my answer to was Mary chosen for a reason? And the second question there. Is anybody else? Anybody have anything on that?
Well, on that third question, what was the third question?
Was Mary chosen for a reason other than being a virgin? And yeah.
So I can speak to that a little bit. I think, again, I like to frame how to think about a question as much as answering it. It's not so much as me giving you an answer, as much as us understanding how do we approach the question. So if you read in the book of Luke, I believe, whenever Mary, imagine a 13-year-old, I have a 14-year-old son. His name's Jackson. And I have a 7-year-old daughter, almost 8. So we're getting close to me really being able to understand that age group at a deep level. And I can't imagine their response. So it's a completely different world, different levels of responsibility at their age groups now. I can't imagine an adolescent teenager's response to, one, an angel coming in their room, right? That's a big deal. And telling them that they're going to be pregnant with, Jesus and all this stuff. Just pregnant itself, much less the Savior of the world kind of coming in to your body, much less if she really was a virgin, which I believe that she absolutely was, the cultural blast that's going to make. And I would love for everybody to go read her response. And in my Bible, it's called Mary's Song. And the response of her heart is one of the reasons why she's so revered in our culture today, or in religious belief systems all over the world, is because of that response to all those crazy, scary things happening to her at somewhat of a young age, even facing being a cultural outcast. Her response was pretty incredible. It's in Luke, chapter 2 maybe 3. It's in the first couple chapters. So go back and read that. It's called Mary's Song. And I believe that's why she was chosen.
Thanks, everyone. Does anyone else want to weigh in on those Google questions about Mary? All right, well, let's move on. All right, the next one is a pretty cool question. We had some kind of conversation off camera, and I'm going to pitch it out to the panel. The person who submitted this question, one of our students here at One Life, said, I thought Advent was only celebrated by certain religions or denominations. How is Advent different than Christmas? So anyone want to weigh in on that?
All right, so I loved this question because I was raised Southern Baptist. And so Advent was not, other than like those little calendars with the chocolate in every day leading up to Christmas, that was my basic knowledge of Advent. And so I actually did some research with my son, who's in middle school. He's a 7th grader, Max. And we talked through this. And so the idea of Advent is the preparation and anticipation leading up to Christmas and what we celebrate as the birth of Christ. And so on that day, everything in the whole entire world changed. And so it's just that anticipation. And so while it is probably known better in some denominations versus others, it's really a Christian celebration and anticipation is my take on it. But I think somebody else has a different aspect of it.
So I also love this question because I was raised in the Catholic Church, and so Advent was a huge deal. And then when I started going to like the Methodist Church, and then ended up here at One Life, it was very different how Advent was celebrated. But like Nikki said, it's the anticipation of the birth of Christ. When I was a kid, we'd have an Advent wreath or an Advent log with 4 candles, and it would be love, joy, hope, and peace. And each of the 4 Sundays before Christmas, you would focus on each of those things in preparation to kind of prepare for the high holy day of celebration that is Christmas, and then the 12 days after. So to me, what's been really cool is to kind of see that be more and more incorporated into kind of non-denominational and other denominations of Christianity, because even though it is kind of an ecumenical thing, I think that preparing of ourselves for the celebration of Christmas kind of keeps the focus where it should be on Christ's birth and the weight of that and what that means for all of mankind.
Thanks, Cecilia. Anyone else want to weigh in on the Advent question? Cool. All right. So let's go back to Google and let's ask another question. Did the shepherds what?
All right. Did the shepherds arrive the same night Jesus was born? I'm going to pass this question off because my world was just rocked with a little side conversation that I did not know as far as Jesus not being born on Christmas Day. So anybody else like to weigh in while I go back to my corner and get myself together?
One thing, if you think about shepherds being out in the fields, so right now, Christmas time, and of course, yes, it is in the Middle East, but still it is cooler, it is colder. Sheep and shepherds were out in the springtime. So also, an angel showed up to the shepherds and told the shepherds, it is time to go find a baby lying in a manger. So if the angel shows up to the shepherds and tells them that it's time for to go search for the baby lying in a manger, I don't see how they could have shown up on the same night that Jesus was born. Also, the angel represents peace. And if you have younger brothers and sisters, this next Sunday, we're talking about the shepherds in kids service. So plug the kids service right there.
So I know where I will be on Sunday, finding out a little bit more about the shepherds. All right, back to Google. Did the shepherds leave their sheep? That's a very good question. From my understanding and what I looked up, they were already in the area, and so the sheep kind of already live in the area. And if you're a shepherd, what you do is kind of guide your sheep to go eat somewhere and kind of graze, and then you guide them back to safe shelter. And so as far as leaving their sheep there all night, I'm not sure how close the shepherds were, but they were far enough away where they had to travel to meet Jesus. And so does anybody else have anything to kind of weigh in on whether or not?
Yeah, you know what? Yes. This is not from a religious perspective, but as a shepherd, I can't imagine that they would have they had to leave somebody behind or put the sheep back in a shelter. Otherwise, they're going to come home to 0 sheep or at least a fewer sheep. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think they had to leave them back to someplace safe or head there in the morning or I don't know, unless they want their sheep eaten by bears or whatever they have there.
That's really good that we have an actual shepherd in the room and we can pull from that just real life experience.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense, especially Jesus being the shepherd. He would never leave us out just anywhere. Even if it's to watch a miracle, he wouldn't just leave us there and just good luck from here. So that's good to know. All right, the next question. Did the shepherds bring gifts for Jesus? That's a really good question. Maybe they did leave a sheep as a gift to Jesus. I mean, it all kind of now starts to make sense. I know the wise men brought specific gifts that the Bible lays out as far as gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We won't get too far deep into that as to why those gifts were needed at that time, but you can totally look that up, but there is a purpose behind those gifts financially, and so yeah, look that up. Does anybody else have anything about as far as shepherds bringing gifts to Jesus? All right. Off the hot seat and into a bigger fire. These are really good questions. Did the shepherds know how important Jesus' birth was? Yes. The wise men, as we talked about earlier, were following a North Star to Jesus, but the angels actually did visit the shepherds and let them know how important it was. And so that's why they were there as far as witnessing. Again, this is nowhere close to the same thing, but I was unable to witness the Bethlehem star last night because I waited just a little bit too long and it got a little bit too low. Had I known how important that was, I would have put it in my calendar and set an alarm because apparently that was one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. And so had I known and been a little bit more informed, I definitely would have been there just to say that I was there. Does anybody else have anything?
First of all, my husband's an amateur meteorologist, in case you guys didn't know that. And so you do have until Christmas to get a glimpse at that. They weren't completely over top of each other last night. So you still have a chance to view that. I just wanted to weigh in really quickly on the shepherds versus the wise men, and those both being present in the Christmas story. I had this called to my attention last year around Christmas time, and that the shepherds, and Ryan talked about this earlier today, they weren't very trusted. They weren't very important or respected people. However, the wise men or the magi were extremely respected and revered. And so the reason that they're both in there and they're both in the Christmas story and called attention to is because it shows that Jesus really was born for everyone. He was born for the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. And so it gives you those two very contrasting pictures of people who were notified of Jesus' birth to be there to celebrate.
To piggyback off of what Nikki just said, think about a shepherd's job. A shepherd's job was very, very stressful. They had 100 sheep to watch. They had to make sure that one didn't run off. They had to make sure everyone was eating at the same time. So their job was extremely stressful. When the angel shows up to those shepherds, the angel says, there is a Prince of Peace. And so, like Nikki just said, when the angel shows up to the shepherds, it is completely different than what the wise men were expecting and were going to get when they showed up to Bethlehem. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Cool. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? All right, moving on. So the next question we have here, this one was again submitted by one of our very own One Life students. How do we know heaven is real? That's a good question. I think Ryan's going to jump in on that one.
Yeah, so I'm back again with less answers and more methods of approach to the question. So here's the thing. The only thing we really know, like when we, in America, when we picture heaven, like here's what we generally picture, like these little cupids flying around, you know, like angel wings and flipping around in the clouds, and there's, you know, streets, they're gold, and we have our gigantic mansions if we were good, and we have our little shacks if we weren't as good, and we had, you know, we see family, and it's all great, and it's all good, and it's generally speaking defined by language like streets of gold and mansions in the sky. Like we hear hymns about that. I think there's a hymn called Mansions in the Sky. And I all mean well. Do what? Yeah, so I think there's actually like a hymn called that. I'm showing my age there. But here's the thing. When you read Scripture and you hear the Bible talk about heaven, you even hear Jesus talking about the kingdom of God, it's always defined by God and His presence. Like rarely ever is it ever anywhere is it really defined, except for Revelation, with language like streets of gold, and there's reasons for that. I mean, think about it. If Jesus is here and He comes to save the world, or find a way of salvation for the world, or a way to God for the world by dying on a cross and suffering on our behalf, would eternity in heaven with Him really be defined by streets of gold or a mansion? Like Jesus was all about humility. Jesus was all about like the other. He was all about other people. He was all about hospitality towards outsiders. He was all about being welcome and showing the beauty of the character and nature of our God to people. And so when I think about heaven, I know growing up, and I don't think my parents did this on purpose or anybody did it on purpose, but I always filtered the idea of heaven through streets of gold and mansions. But I think what the Bible challenges us to do is to filter our understanding of heaven through Jesus. And that's why if you read His life, He's incredibly loving towards people that culture would consider to be outsiders. Even the Jewish people's enemies. He would challenge them to love their enemies. He would challenge them to serve people. And people that would be, whether they were like prostitutes and things of that nature, would have been outcasts of society. And He would go and love on them and love them well and serve them. And so I really think that's the character and nature of God and through Jesus. And so when we think about heaven, generally speaking, I like to think about it through the lens of Jesus and His life. And so with that said, I don't know that we can know that heaven as you're picturing it, depending on what you're picturing, is real. But what I know is that there is a place of some sort on the afterlife to where we're gonna be in what I like to call the uninhibited presence of God, to where there's no longer going to be a separation between the dimension He lives in and where we are. And that, I can't help but think that to be a pretty incredible place for us to exist. So that's how I approach that question. That's how I think about heaven. I love more questions on it, though.
Thanks, Ryan. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question? No. That's kind of a tough question. A tough one. Cool. All right. So the consensus is that campus pastor Ryan Nunn nailed that question. All right. So let's move on. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our last Google autofill here. And this one's going to be all about Jesus. So, Aaron?
All right, so they gave me my favorite topic, Jesus. Anyway, was Jesus really born in a manger? Now, I don't necessarily think Jesus was born in a manger. That would be kind of hard and awkward. However, I do believe it says in the Bible, even when the angels showed up to the shepherds and the wise men in their dream, that they would find a baby lying in a manger. So I think Jesus was born of Mary, and then Mary laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. So the king of the universe, the God of the universe, was laid in a manger. And I think there is a symbol there that, again, he came for everyone, not just the rich, not just the important, but so anybody?
I want to add a little something to that, because I think where some of this confusion comes from is what is a manger. So a manger is it's like a wooden hay rack. That's where the guy that owned the inn, that Mary and Joseph came to the inn, there was no room anywhere because of the census, and they sent Mary and Joseph out to the stable where the animals were kept. And in the stable, the innkeeper, all the travelers that would come and put their animals in there would go out and feed the animals, and that was where they put the hay and the feed for the animals. So it was nice and soft. They could keep the baby up out of the barn floor where you can imagine a lot of animals are staying. It's not super clean, probably doesn't smell great, but that was one place that there wouldn't be any dirt or other stuff. So a lot of people think they hear manger and they think it's the building they were all in. That's the stable, and the manger is like the little hay rack. So I think that's maybe where some of the confusion might come.
It's a very good insight from our resident shepherd.
All right. Question number 2. Was Jesus really born in Bethlehem? Absolutely. Mary, like Nikki has already touched on, Mary was engaged to Joseph, who was in the lineage of David. And so they were having a census where each person had to come and pay their taxes. And so they would have to go back to their birth town. And Joseph was in the lineage of David, which led him to have to go to Bethlehem in Judea to be counted by the census. And so that is where Mary ended up birthing Jesus. Good deal. Next question. Was Jesus really a carpenter? Well, again, going back to Joseph, Joseph by trade was a carpenter. There are two different terms for the word carpenter. When we think of carpenter, we think of woodworker or somebody who works with wood. In the Middle East, there is the term carpenter might have meant stoneworker. So basically, when you think of the word carpenter in the Bible, think of it as somebody who works with their hands. And so Jesus was, it says, before he started his earthly ministry when he was 33, it says in Luke that he was, in fact, a carpenter before he started his ministry. So he may not have been somebody who built houses, but he was definitely somebody who worked with his hands.
We also have a resident carpenter on the panel. I don't know if Ryan wants to weigh in. Oh, okay. All right.
He said he used to do that before his ministry, too. I think he's trying to say he's... Was Jesus really a man? Yes.
Fully God, fully man.
So I think the question really was Jesus actually here on earth? And there is historical evidence that shows that Jesus did in fact walk the streets of Jerusalem, and that there was a man who died on a cross, buried in a manger, or buried in a tomb, and that tomb is now empty. There has been historical evidence of that. Does anybody want to? So, yes, Jesus was a man. And so we do have one that's not on here, but it was submitted by one of you. And so we thought, why not answer this question at the same time? So the question was, when was Jesus really born? So was Jesus actually born on December 25th? The answer to that question is no, he wasn't. We really don't know when Jesus was born, but if you think about what I was talking about earlier with the shepherds, the idea that the angel showed up to the shepherds and they were with their sheep leads us to believe that it was sometime in the spring, when Jesus was born. The census, historically, the census took place in the spring months, March, April, June, somewhere around in that area. So why then do we celebrate Christmas on December 25th? It goes back to a time in history where there was a pagan holiday that was celebrated around the winter solstice, which is December the 21st. So the festival actually took place from the 17th of December to the 25th of December. And so when Christians around that time, they wanted to have a Christian celebration along with the pagan celebration. And so that's when they started celebrating Jesus' birth on December the 25th as a celebration. Lots of different names that it has been called. But like we've said, look it up yourself, research that. But does somebody want to add something to that?
All right. So I don't know about you. I'm processing. I got to process it. So there's two approaches. Two approaches. I can take this information and just use it to be selfish, use it to stir the pot a little bit, like, oh, you all are celebrating a holiday that wasn't even on Jesus' birthday. Or I can use it as a tool to kind of open up conversation. Did you know that Jesus really wasn't born on December 25th? No, I didn't. So now that opens up a door to conversation. Oh, well, Jesus really was. And you can use all that knowledge that you've learned tonight from all these wonderful people, that you've learned from looking up stuff on your own, to have a real deep conversation about something real. Again, I am choosing to continue to celebrate Christmas with my family and with my friends, because if anything, what COVID has taught me is that time isn't guaranteed. And so enjoying and celebrating and cherishing the times that we can spend together is my deal, and that's what I'm getting out of tonight. And I was called in last minute. And so this is really eye-opening for me, and I'm really proud. This is a real face, and so we got this. We got this.
Well, it'd be hard to end on any better of a note than that. Any of our other panelists want to weigh in on Jesus or when he was born or any of that?
I'm going to steal it. Here's the thing. I'll make it quick. You never, ever cease to ask questions. You always ask questions. The hard ones, the easy ones, the ones you don't understand, new things. You never, ever let anybody tell you can't ask questions. They're vital. Keep it up.
That was quick. So there was another question from a middle schooler submitted that we didn't cover, and they wanted to know why we made up some old white man to deliver gifts. Why don't the parents just take credit? And as a mom, I've decided that I'm not taking it anymore, and I am taking credit this year. But more than anything, I think a lot of that came from the spirit of giving and the greatest gift of all being Jesus. And so we, like we do with everything, we wanted some person to give the credit to. I don't know. But I just love that question because I thought, you know what? Why did we do that? There was a real St. Nicholas, yes, but it has definitely blown up to this whole thing. And the real St. Nicholas was very a giving man and things like that. But I think I just loved that question because I was like, why are we giving him credit? I don't even know at this point.
Any other closing remarks? Cecilia, Aaron, AA Ron?
As Nikki said, I always like to have the last word. Just kidding. I do want to say this though, as Ryan and Anthony have already said, if you're battling with questions, you have somebody who you can talk to. Find any one of us, your parents at your house. Just make sure that as you're doing your research, you need to find it for yourself too. Okay, so trust yourself, trust us. If you have deeper questions, maybe the questions that we answered, you have that triggers you to have more questions, please find us. We would love the opportunity to sit down over coffee, whatever, talk with you. All right, we love you.
Thank you so much for checking out this One Life Students experience. And just like all of our panelists said, we encourage you to continue to think and wonder and explore. We want you to search out these answers. As the campus pastor from our campus in Henderson, Kentucky stated, never stop asking questions, never stop exploring, never stop pursuing a deeper understanding of the Bible, of Jesus, of your worldview. Continue to explore, continue to chase those truths. And we look forward to continuing to walk down this road with you. And as all of our digital team leaders said, if there's ever anything that we can do, if there's ever any questions that you are still pursuing and struggling with, come to one of us, reach out to us online or at a campus or somewhere where you can find us. And we look forward to walking through these Explore questions with you moving forward into the future. So again, Merry Christmas, and we hope you have an incredible new year moving into 2021 and everything that it will bring.